Hi guys, it's me, Shakti Sundari, and I just broke off a video about the gift. Someone said they couldn't hear me, but actually I've just tested it and the sound's working fine. So I'm making this video again, and that's cool. I get to repeat myself. Maybe I'll be a bit more succinct this time. This video is about the gift. The gift is a workshop that I offer. It's a book that I'm writing. It's a process for discovering your power and your potential and expanding into the greatest of your being in life. So, um, yeah, how did I get to this title? Well, do you know, the gift is just a title that landed really some time ago, like probably a year or two ago, actually, into my consciousness as a phrase that describes this process. And it came out of actually my writing of my first book, which isn't published yet. But as I was writing this book, which is kind of a reflection of the last 10 years of my life and my sexual and spiritual awakening, what I began to see, the gift of writing that book was it was about a lot of heartache and a lot of ups and downs in my life through relationship. I have been exploring conscious relationship and tantra and love for many years. It's been my passion. And so what was happening in my life was that I would be having repeated experiences of heartbreak and difficulty and challenge in relationship. And I couldn't understand it, and I wanted to understand it. And as I've written this book, it really gave me a wonderful portal to see the gift of each one of those relationship failures in terms of the expansion of my understanding, the growth of my soul, my spiritual evolution, and my deepening into a capacity for greater love. So even though the circumstances that I experienced were from time to time agonizing, actually, heartbreaking, devastating, betrayal, abandonment, lies, all kinds of other stuff that I experienced repeatedly, and it felt like shit. And most notoriously, last year I had the experience of being in relationship with, in a situation that felt very abusive, actually, and I didn't really realize it fully until I was out of it. But that was really the pits, the ultimate. But that experience, you could look at that and think, bloody hell, why did that happen to me? And what did I do to deserve that? And how can that be possibly fair when I've been devoting my life to love, to conscious relationship? you know? But what I've come to understand, what I've really come to see is that all of those really challenging experiences have offered me wonderful, wonderful gifts. Okay, so I've come to that understanding, I've come to that knowing, and I've come to see that it's in every situation in life that seems like it's a difficulty, that seems like it's a challenge, that seems like it's unfair, that seems like it's dark. There's a kernel of soul's blessing in there, which is there. It's there for us to see if we want to look. If we want to reframe our situation, if we want to step out of victimhood, if we want to empower ourselves, if we want to grow, it's there in the deepest, darkest depths of every situation that seems wrong, that seems unfair, that seems, why did this happen to me? There is a gift that's wrapped up, that may be hidden, that if we have the courage to look and to see, we can unwrap and receive the blessings of that gift. And usually it's like way more than just one. Usually there's loads of gifts for these kinds of situations. I'll give you another example from my own experience. Just looking to see who's there because I can't see without my glasses on. Another example is something I was just talking about earlier. So I discovered this dance practice called the Near Technique, right? When I was living in the States, this was in 2001. It became my absolute passion. I knew it was my soul's purpose to train and to teach this the minute I walked into the class. I trained. I invested thousands of dollars in training and time and money in learning and teaching. I was brilliant and naturally gifted at this practice. It was just meant for me. I grew my practice. I was teaching 6 classes a week, and this is while I had 2 young kids. I was a natural, and I was marketing and growing a community in the States where I was living. Everything was thriving, and I was on track to become a teacher trainer, and that's where I knew I was headed. And I was burning with passion for this. It seemed so clear to me. Fast forward, I moved back to the UK at a time when my marriage was falling apart and I had 2 very young children. And despite that, I knew that I was going to sort of take this technique to London and to the UK and become a teacher trainer. However, something happened that put a complete spanner in that works. There was another teacher who was already here in London who really didn't want me to be here and felt very threatened by my presence, and who thought that I was out to take her business from her, or yeah, she saw it as a competition, which I absolutely didn't, and she bullied me in the most horrible way. Being as I was then at that time, a single mom, I didn't have many friends around me because I just moved back to the UK. I felt absolutely victimized. Make no bones about it, I felt this was utterly unfair. I couldn't understand why this was happening to me. I'd done so much from my heart. It felt really wrong. It felt really unfair. And, it was one of the things that pushed me right down into, feeling like giving up, actually, a really dark moment for me. Um, and I couldn't see the gift of that for a very long time, and I didn't have the understanding that I now have about how everything is a soul choice and everything is a gift. Looking back now, however, I can see how that block that she put up for me as far as going any further with that practice here in the UK diverted me. And so what happened was I then took up other practices. I took up Kundalini yoga. I took up Tantra. I began to create my own dance practice. I took up healing training. I became a body worker. And so ultimately, my life and my vision of what was possible for me expanded way beyond what it might have been. Now, I couldn't have known that at the time. At the time, it just felt unfair. It felt wrong. It felt like I was being punished. I didn't understand it. Looking back, I can see the divine perfection in the flow of events. And the thing that made me suffer more was resisting it. So I was kind of up against it, and I kept resisting and resisting and resisting and pushing and pushing and pushing and saying, how unfair is this? Had I let go and just stepped back and just allow myself to rest with what was, I would have moved through and past and beyond that much more quickly. Here's another one. How many of you look at your life situation now and blame someone else for it? Actually, I don't now, but I used to. I used to blame my parents for what was wrong with me and what was wrong with my life. I grew up in a household where my dad was a typical patriarch. He was very controlling, very dominant, wasn't there, wasn't emotionally present, wasn't physically present. He was psychologically abusive and emotionally abusive to my mother and also to us children. And on one occasion, he was physically violent to me. My mum was a victim. She was depressed. She was nervous. She was anxious. She was very unhappy in her role and in her life. So that was what was modeled for me as a young person. And of course, it impacted me. And of course, as a young adult, I was struggling, even though I looked on the surface very successful, very smart, very bright, succeeding in business, I was unhappy inside. And I blamed my parents for this. If only they had loved me, if only they had done this, if only they had done that, then I wouldn't be like this. I was successful, I had loads of money, I had a house, but I wasn't happy inside. And I blamed them for a lot of that. Well, what happens when we blame others? We stay disempowered. We take ourselves into victim consciousness, and we're not actually taking responsibility for our lives. Now, once again, if I reframe that and step out of the victim mode and look at the gift of that, you know, I believe my soul chose those parents. My soul chose to be born into that household, to those specific parents. Everything is a soul choice ultimately. And when we go beyond this 3D reality, we know that and we see that. Looking back, I chose the most perfect parents for what I'm now doing with my life. It's my absolute passion to understand, to practice and to teach Tantra, conscious relationship, to be a priestess of love and sacred sexuality, to teach other women about self-empowerment. I wouldn't be doing that if it had not been for the situation that I grew up in at home, seeing the worst kind of relating modeled for me, seeing the most disempowered woman before me in the face of my mother. So they gave me the greatest gift, which is all of the sort of the rocket fuel and the potential to be who I am now, doing what I am now. I wouldn't be who I am now if it were not for them. So now I'm in a position to say thank you to them. I don't blame them for anything now. I'm only grateful to them. And now, you know, I love them and I accept them for who they are. So that's the possibilities that are there. So this is just to say that if you're going through a situation, or you have been going through a situation that feels wrong, unfair, difficult, challenging, where you might have given up hope, actually, I promise you there's a nugget in there, there's a gift in there, which is a gift for your soul to grow. And if you're willing to, you can find it. And that's what my workshop is all about. Now, one caveat, or a few caveats actually, it does take some time to go beyond. I think we all need a certain amount of time to heal when something really tragic or traumatic has happened, to get to the place when we are ready, where the timing feels right to say, right now I'm ready to look at this. You know, initially you may not have the capacity and the wherewithal to do that, and that is perfectly normal and perfectly right. The body, the mind, the emotions need some time to just be and to just heal. However, you will get to a point where you then are able to see that you have a choice, and that you had a choice, and that you can now determine and co-create your life with God, with the divine. And it's then when you're ready to take responsibility, and when you have the strength to do so, that my course comes into play. So that's it. I'd be really, really curious to hear your own stories of life situations or challenges that have been really difficult for you, where you've then discovered that they were actually the greatest gift that could have been given to you. So yeah, tell me your stories. I'd love to hear them. Ask me your questions. And if you're based in London, because this workshop itself is going to be in London on May the 12th, then do post below and I'll send you the details, and or the event is listed on my Shakti Sundari Facebook page and on my website, www.shaktisundari.com. That's it. Thank you for watching, guys, and much love. Satnam.